We're going to start off by building a test page, and to build that test page we're going to need a collection of components to all come together. We're going to need a controller that will take an incoming request and process it and then deliver something out. We're going to need a route, which will be the address of where our page is going to be, and we're going to need a template which will control the final output. So let's start off with the controller because everything else is going to hang off that. So I'm going to come into my pad add-on directory here and create a new directory, and I'm going to call it pub because this is going to be a public controller. Now I'm going to kind of do this the long way around because it's the gold standard, it's the way that we do it in XenForo itself, but so long as your classes extend the correct bits and pieces, then it doesn't really matter where you put them. But I'm going to do it the XenForo way just because that's what I always do. So pub and controller, and now I'm going to create a class inside here. So new PHP class, and seeing as we're making a scratchpad notepad type thing, I'm going to create a controller called note, which will deal with the notes that make up our scratchpad. So I'm going to call it note.php, and I'll deal with the extension and everything else afterwards. So let's OK that. No, I don't want to add that to Git, thank you. Now it's automatically created a namespace for me, which is important because in a big object-oriented application like XenForo, we use namespaces to make sure that we can identify different bits and pieces from where they come from. So the namespace is quite easy to identify. It's just the name of the add-on, and then essentially the directory path down to where you are from a starting point of the add-on. So demo pad pub controller. We've got this class note, and we need to extend the abstract controller, I believe it's called, from XF. There we go. So now it's automatically added the abstract controller in the list of classes it's going to use, and that is now essentially ready to go. It doesn't do anything yet, but it does exist. So in order to use that, we need to tell XenForo how to get to it, and we do that with a route. So let's head to the front end of XenForo, and you can see that at the moment I'm at the members route, and I'm going to change that to /notes, and it's going to tell me that it has no idea what I'm talking about. There is no route that controls /notes, and as there's no controller, there's also no action. So what we need to do is we need to go to the control panel and create a route that will glue these things together. So development, routes, add a route. It's going to be a public route, and the route prefix is, as you can see there, notes. So that will correspond to this /notes here. I'm using full friendly URLs here just for ease of typing, but if you're not using friendly URLs, then the identification of the route should be relatively straightforward. Anyway, I'm going to ignore all of that stuff for now and just come to the controller. Now you can see that I've actually done this before, and the controller is demo /pad, because once we're in PHP we have to separate directory paths with backslashes and then a colon and a note, and this is essentially saying any note controller that exists within the demo pad. So we'll say OK to that, and notice that it's pre-selected the demo scratchpad notepad thingy, because that's what we specified in our config.php, and we'll hit save. So now the notes route is here, and it tells me that it's going to respond to notes /. So if I come back here and hit refresh again, then it won't work yet, but we will get a new error. So now it's saying invalid action, but the controller was demo /pad :note, and the action was index. So we've got two things to note here. First of all, we have no action. We only have the route. and as a result, XenForo will look for an action called index, in the same way as a web server tends to treat index.html or index.php within a directory as the default document. So if you don't specify a document, it will return index.something or other. XenForo does something similar with actions. If you don't specify an action, it will look for an action called index. So let's create that. We'll come into here, and on a new line we'll have a public function called action index. Don't need to put anything else in there for now. Let's just check that that is actually going to get called up. So we'll come back here and hit refresh, and there we go. So it's identified the correct action, but there was no reply from action index. And why was there no reply? Well, action index doesn't reply. It doesn't return anything yet. So let's get it to return something. And the thing it's going to return is a view. So we'll say return this view, and you can see here it's going to expect a class string for the view, and then a template name, and then an array of parameters as an optional argument. So the name of the view class, as a general rule, it's good to have something that reflects where we are in the controller and the action. So I'm going to call this demo/pad, because that's the add-on we're in, colon note/index. So essentially it's a copy of the controller path here, but it's going to point to a view. The view itself is a class that is optionally defined. If you don't define one, it will use the standard view, and we'll come back to that in a much later step. But for now, just use some sort of semantic naming that allows each of your actions to have a uniquely identified view, like I've done here. Next, we're going to specify a template for it to call. And just as we did before, I'm going to namespace that with the add-on ID that we're using. So it's going to be demo_pad_, and let's call it index, seeing as that's where we are. We're just going to use this as a test page for now. The third parameter for view here would be an array of parameters to pass to the template, but we're going to ignore that for now because this is literally just a test page. So let's come back to the control panel and go and create that template. Let's copy that while we're here. So here we are in appearance, templates, add a template, making sure it's public and master style again. We're going to call it demo_pad index, and now I'm going to put in just some text to identify it. And I'm actually going to hit save and exit here because I'm going to do all my editing in my code editor rather than messing around in the template editor in the XenForo web application, because although it can do some relatively basic things like auto completion of tags and things like that, it's not a full-fledged HTML editor, and why would we cause ourselves the suffering of using that when we can use a full-fledged editor like PHP Store? So we'll save and exit that, and sure enough, there it is, and it tells me the add-on that it belongs to. And then you see that little chevron's appeared next to my public directory here, and there is demo_pad index. So let's open him up, and there is the text that is in the demo_pad index. Let's just add a little more meat to that. I'm going to give it an XF title tag, and we're going to call it demo_pad index page. And if you don't already know what the XF title template syntax does, it specifies the actual title tag for the page that we're going to be loading in, and it also puts its value into the h1 tag for that page by default. Now let's give it a bit of test content, so I'll just have an xf.block. will sort of do, and let's go and save that. Now, worth noting here that although I've saved out this template and the file there has received that content has not been slurped up into the database where the system will use it at this point. The system has no idea that we've done anything with that template. But what's going to happen is when I ask the system to use that template, it will check to see if the file has changed while we're in development mode. And if the file's changed, then it will slurp up the contents of that, stick it in the database, compile it, and use it there. So if I were to open DemoPad index right now, it still has the original content. It doesn't have this stuff. Whereas if I come back in here, and we know that it's going to reload the correct content because it's going to look for the return value for action index from the note controller. So let's refresh that just to check that it will. DemoPad index page, there's the H1, and here's my hello there. Now at this point, the template has been slurped up into the database, compiled and saved. You might have noticed that page refresh took slightly longer, and that's because it was doing that template slurp and compile. And you'll notice down in my query count here that it executed 14 queries to build this page. But if I refresh that, the queries go down to 4, because 10 of those queries were involved in the template compilation process. So now the page reloads very, very fast and only uses 4 queries. Whereas if I put something new in there and hit refresh, then we're going to go back to 14 queries, and it took much longer. But refresh again, and now we're back down there. So having said all that, if we go back into the DemoPad index template here and hit refresh, then we should see the content that we've been working on in the editor there. So having one page built is all very well, but what we need to do now is we need to build some more pages. Let's see how to get those built and then link them together. So let's start off by creating an action for our second page. So we're going to come back in here to the controller and do another public function, which I'm going to misspell again. And I'm going to call this, what shall we call it? Action test, just to be really adventurous. And I'm going to take the view return from that action index, dump it in there, and just adapt it so that we can use it. So now we've got a new action test, and it's going to return a view called DemoPad note test and a template called DemoPad test. So let's head back into the template editor, and having said just now that we're not going to use the template editor at all, we do have to use it to actually add templates. There's no way to add a template through the file system alone. You do have to do it through the template editor. So let's just grab hold of the name of that template from there and dump it in here, and we'll do the same thing again. Save and exit. And when we pop back over here, we'll find that DemoPad index has appeared. So let's open that up and then put in the appropriate XF title. The second test page will do, and then we'll use another one of those. Put a block row in there and add a bit of content. That'll do. And now what I should be able to do is if we go back to the controller just to review what we've done, we've got action index, so that will be returned if we call up the root with no action, and this one will only respond if we have the root, namely notes/test. So let's go and grab it and see that it works. So here we are in /notes. Now let's go to /notes/test, and you can see already that we've got the second test page, and here we go. So great. Now let's link between them, and to do that we're going to start using the link builder. I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail later on, but for now we're just going to do a basic link between these two pages. So let's start with the index page, and let's make this a little more interesting. So we'll surround that with where is the thing? There we go. We'll surround that with the p tag, and then we'll have another p tag with a link in it. Let's just leave that as is for a minute and see. Open the test page. And now we can talk about how to actually use the link. Now we're going to use the what we call curly syntax or curly bracket syntax, which is the sort of second part of XenForo template syntax after the xf : tag syntax. So in here we're going to have a double curly brace, and inside that link, that's essentially a function call, so we'll have some parentheses there. And now we link to it by using the root and the action. So in this case it is notes/test. And that's all we need at this point. As I said, we'll come back to the link builder later on to do more advanced linking, but at this point that will link us to the test action from the notes root. So let's go to the demo test pad as well, and we'll have let's do something like that. Get rid of my typos, and we'll go to link, and this time we're just going to link to notes with no action because we're going to the index root. And we'll just do that, and let's go check that that works. So we'll refresh this page, and there's my link back to the index, and that takes us to the index page. Notice that was a bit slow because it's recompiling. This one will be fast because there's no compile to do, I think, or at least there we go. Now it's fast because the templates have done their job. So here we go, linking between them, and you can see that up in the URL bar there we're going between notes and notes/test. So that's the basics of linking. So now that we know how to build a link, it would be useful to employ that knowledge to provide a link from the main system into our pad pages, because right now they are completely isolated. They're orphaned from the rest of the system. If I were to go over and click on any link within the XenForo system, then I've got no way of clicking back to my notepad pages because it's not linked anywhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a navigation entry, and I think we're just going to have a little link that says notes among these tabs up at the top here, which is very straightforward to do. So we'll just head over to the control panel here, and then we'll go to setup and public navigation, which controls that stuff up at the top there. And you can see that the public navigation is laid out in this tree of content here. So let's take a quick look at one of these items. We've got an item called forums, and you can see it's styled slightly differently to show that it's a top level item. And it has children of new posts and forum list and find threads, which has its own child entries of this stuff. So let's just take a quick look at that here, and you can see that by and large that reflects what you just saw in the control panel. Some of those items don't appear because they have conditionals attached to them, but that's not something we need to worry about right now. So we're going to add a new top level item, and to do that we need to know what display order to give it. Now these tabs are arranged according to their display order, so this one will have a higher display order than this one, which has a higher display order than this one and this one, etc. So if we go and take a look at what those display orders are, we actually print them out without having to click through into them. So home has a display order of 100, forums 200, and then right down to members, which has a display order of 600. So we need to give our entry a display order of at least 601 in order for it to appear last in that list. So let's add a new item, and we'll call it demo pad notes, which you can see I've already had set up there, and I'm going to call it notes, and the parent navigation entry is going to be nothing, and the display order is going to be something greater than 600, so I'm going to give it a display order of 1000. And the type is a basic link. I'm not going to make its display conditional, it's just always going to be there. And we're going to use link building syntax as if we were in a template here. So link, and then we're going to link to notes, and then close that off. We can see that the add-on has already been pre-selected. So let's hit save on that, and here it is. It appears at the bottom of the list. So when I come back here and click on any link to go somewhere, then my notes item will appear, and clicking on it will take me to the notes page. So now we have a test page that links to a second test page, which are linked from the top item. So let's, while we're here, just go and add a child item to this, because right now there is no change to the list of sub navigation items. So let's come in here and say we want to add navigation, and I'm going to call it demo pad notes test, because we're going to link to the second test page, and I'll call it test page. The parent entry this time is going to be notes, and I'll give it a display order of 10 so that I've got options later on to put entries before and after it. It's another basic link, and this time we're going to use that but with /test, just as we did in the template. This is all looking good. We'll hit save on that, and what we should see now when we click onto notes is oh, I forgot something. When we built the root, I said that we'd go back and do some more advanced stuff, and the one thing that we haven't done that we need to do at this point is to say what the section context is for the root. Right now, when we click on our notes pages, it doesn't have a section context, so it shows me the sort of unselected collection of navigation items. So what I want to do is I want to say that I want the section context for the notes root to be this demo pad notes navigation item. So we'll copy that, come down into development, go to roots and find my notes root, and in section context I will paste that in there and hit save, and that's all there is to it. Now when I click onto forums, then the forums tab selects. When I click into members, then the members tab selects, and when I click into notes, the notes tab selects, and I've got my test page sub-navigation item. If I'm somewhere else, then the notes becomes a split link, so I can access the menu, and there we go.